Alright, welcome in. I'm the Kodiak, and today we are coming in with an absolute banger of a video. A true hoot and a holler, if you will. And today I am here to talk about the quarterback market landscape. So before we get into anything, I just want to say, leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're not already. You could always wait until the end, and hopefully I will have earned it, because I assume that this is going to be a very long video. So kick back, relax, do whatever you need to do. Throw me on your TV, throw me on your phone. Whether you're listening to this at work, whether you're listening to this at, home or school or whatever, I don't know, wherever people want to listen to me. Kick back, relax, and enjoy, and let's dive right into it. So, talking about quarterback contracts, the reason this is a hot topic is because earlier today, it was reported that Tua Tagovailoa and Jordan Love had received new extensions. And these extensions, they are market-setting extensions, meaning the team's paid up. Like, they are now getting, Tua and Jordan Love, respectively, are now getting around $50 million a year. And man, that is a lot of money. If only I was a little more talented and I could be making money like that. But this is the new hot topic of the offseason, because I think a lot of the discussion around these deals is how good are those guys relative to what they are in the market. Like, can you win with Tua? Can you win with Goff? Can you win with Trevor Lawrence? Can you win with Love? All those guys that signed big deals this offseason. But one thing to remember is that QB contracts are progressive. So first of all, the title of highest paid quarterback doesn't always last throughout the NFL. You'll see 1 week, Trevor Lawrence is getting a market value contract, and then next week, Tua gets it. And then not even a few hours later, Jordan Love gets it. Ooh, excuse me right there. But teams are desperate for quarterbacks that are at least decent with flashes and at least have the potential to be a franchise QB. I mean, if Daniel Jones can show in one playoff game that he is worthy of a second contract, then I don't see why most other quarterbacks who at least have some tie to the organization, whether the organization, used some high draft capital on them, whether the organization threw them in and the player gave you some high quality play, whatever. There are a lot of justifications for giving a guy a second contract, but on the other hand, I understand why sports players go for every penny. This is their last chance to potentially create generational wealth that you and me are likely never going to see throughout our lifetimes. And the NFL is a billion-dollar entity, and when you do have this chance to play professional football for a living, to etch your name in the history books, to become a part of something that millions of people tune into on Sundays, this is your chance. This is your chance to set yourself up and your future generations, your great, whatever, grandchildren, up for success financially. And that's one thing that I think we need to remember, is that ultimately these guys are humans just like the rest of us, and they are chasing a bag, and they're chasing freedom and just chasing, legacy, rings, whatever motivates them. But the money element does come along with any business, and it definitely comes along in professional sports. So here are the 4 newest QB contracts that were signed this offseason. I can't remember if I was missing one, but yeah, I probably should have looked that up before I even started this. But these are the 4 main guys I want to focus on, since they did sign theirs relatively recently. Goff, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua Tagovailoa. And all these guys, you'll notice they got around the same amount of money per year, and these guys aren't paid drastically different from one another. But one thing you have to know is that next year, 2 notable quarterbacks are going to be seeking giant extensions. Dak Prescott as well as Brock Purdy are both going to be seeking giant extensions. So who is going to lay out the bag for Dak Prescott? Because at this point, it doesn't look like it's going to be the Cowboys. And to be honest, I don't think it should be the Cowboys, just because of how the cap is going to go up and how it's scaled. But here's an in-depth look on the Jared Goff deal. 4 years, $212 million. So that's an average of $53.1 million per year. Pretty much identical to the Tua deal. $170 million in guarantees. And what I think about this contract is, as far as a market contract, I think it's pretty solid, because he initially was sent to Detroit to offset the loss of Matthew Stafford. It worked with cap, and it made sense because the Lions were at least getting something back, some semblance of a quarterback back, even though the NFL was pretty low on Goff at the time. Like, if you look at a lot of the opinions surrounding Goff from the 2019-2020 year after the Rams had made the Super Bowl, a lot of people were not very high on him because people didn't think that he could put on his helmet without the help of Sean McVay. They didn't think he was, that leader that people could look up to in the locker room. And all I have to say is that he was sent to Detroit to die, literally. But he progressed, and he literally became an asset to what the Lions have built and their whole culture rebuild that they've been going through with Brad Holmes and with Dan Campbell over the past few seasons. But they're banking on him hard, especially because there are some big contracts with this team that are coming up. They just paid Sewell. They just paid Amon-Ra St. Brown since they got those guys in the 21 draft. I assume they're going to be paying Hutchinson and McNeil next year as well. So, yeah, there's a lot riding on Goff here. And worst case scenario, if the contract doesn't work out and Goff magically sucks, Detroit is a good place for a young quarterback to come in and immediately have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and that run game to lean on, in addition to playing in a dome. So everything, the Lions, it is a good situation for a quarterback, and that is something that has changed overnight, but Goff has made them what they are today as opposed to what they were a few years ago when Campbell and Holmes first came into the building. So Jordan Love deal. 4 years, $220 million, average of $55 million per year. And something that's unique about this is this $75 million signing bonus was paid upfront. Like, you can literally look at it, and it's going to be paid from now until December. So he is getting rich this year. I don't even want to know what that W-2 looks like because holy cow, that is I don't even know what $75 million could buy you in Wisconsin. I assume it could buy you a castle because cost of living there is very cheap. But the bonus is super high. And Green Bay, they like bonuses over guarantees because it does provide you a little bit more flexibility as far as what you can do with restructuring and how you can maneuver stuff around, which more on that later, trust me. But overall, it's a solid gamble, and he had an incredible second half of the year with the young weapons that Green Bay has. They have Dobbs, they have Wicks, they have Reed, they have Watson, they have Musgrave, they have Kraft, and they just added Jacobs and Lloyd this offseason as well. So there's a lot to like about this deal from both sides. Definitely well-deserved, I'd say. And the Packers, they're kind of a team that if this does end up working out a lot, they're going to be a model for NFL teams going forward. Atlanta pretty much is already trying to do the copycat thing with Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins, but yeah. So that's kind of how I feel about the Jordan Love deal. So the Trevor Lawrence deal, this is the deal that I'm pretty, this and the Tua deal, spoiler alert, I'm not really excited about either of these deals just because I didn't think these guys deserved market-setting contracts just based on what they've accomplished in the NFL so far. So Trevor Lawrence, 5 years, $275 million, average of $55 million per year, $36 million signing bonus. And Trevor Lawrence, let's be honest, he pulled this team out of the dumpster, but they're still at a crossroads. People still have questions as to if they can win the division, especially now that the Texans and Colts at least look to have their quarterbacks of the future and the answers. And honestly, Richardson may have some problems staying healthy throughout his career. I hope not, because I hope all these guys are healthy. I hope all these guys can create a great league for us. And I, knock on wood, I just don't want him to get injured, if you can't already tell. But Trevor Lawrence, he pulled this team out of the dumpster because for a long time, the Jaguars, they were decent, but then, when they were first a franchise, but over the past few years, I'm talking last decade or so, they've been, picking in the top 5 perennially. And they never got a first overall pick until they were able to select Trevor Lawrence. But this team overall, it hasn't been good for the most part. But they're still at a crossroads because, yes, they did make the playoffs in 2022. But last year, you started 8-3 and absolutely melted down towards the back half of the year. And again, you have a very tough division, tougher than it's been in a long time. But this deal is very divisive because I could see Trevor Lawrence supporters being like, looking just completely foolish at the end of this. I could see the people in the media that said, no, he's what he was supposed to be. Like, don't get this wrong. He's good. And then I could see the people that were just like, no, Trevor Lawrence is bad. He hasn't played up to what he was supposed to be coming out of college. I could see either side looking foolish after the deal is up in 5 years. And, a lot of people, this is something that's probably going to be defended for like 2 to 3 years. This is not something that people are just going to change their opinion overnight like that. unless Trevor Lawrence goes out and wins the Super Bowl, unless it's one of two extremes. Either he sucks like hardcore, which he has shown to not suck in the NFL, like not even close to it. I think he's a good quarterback. But another thing is if he goes out there and wins the Super Bowl, then the T-Law haters are just going to look foolish. And once again, I mean, you could say that for any of these contracts, but point being, I could see this going either way. And supporters on both sides, like people, I've met a lot of people that don't have an opinion on the Love contract, the Tua contract, or the Goff contract, but they do have one about the Trevor Lawrence deal. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, the Tua Tagovailoa contract, 4 years, $212 million, with an average of $53.1 million per year. So once again, pretty much identical to the Jared Goff contract. Only $3 million guaranteed less, and the guarantees, they made sense for a player with a lengthy injury history. And the Dolphins had zero leverage just because of what they were able to do to him over the first few years of his career. Brian Flores had this guy believing that he could not play and did not belong in the NFL. They tried to replace him with Deshaun Watson in the middle of Deshaun's, allegation stuff. And Tua can look at that and be like, okay, you guys have done me dirty before. I have you guys bent over a barrel. And I thought Tua was going to make enough to buy a small island off the coast of Florida. He probably did anyway. But regardless, I thought he was going to get a lot more than he actually did. I thought he was going to reset the market. But again, I'm not really a fan of this deal or Trevor Lawrence's because the Dolphins, they're a team that they don't really have a lot of high-end talent, but the high-end talent that they do have is just pretty good. Like, for example, you have You have Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle, but other than that, how much star power do you truly have on this team that can still make a difference? You have players like Jalen Ramsey, you have players like Bradley Chubb, you have players like Teron Armstead, but ultimately, as a core, I feel like that's kind of weaker than the rest of the NFL, and now you can't really add to that because you paid Tua so much, and Tua, he has shown a propensity to not get it done in big games. Like, you can say whatever you want about Tua and the Miami Dolphins, and he has made me proud, especially as far as how he has come throughout the NFL, because he looked like he was a complete afterthought in the 2021 season, but then the Dolphins, they run a hyper-efficient attack, but the Dolphins, they just haven't been able to get it done in the big game. This past year was your best chance to go for the division, and it just didn't happen. The Bills still won the division despite it being there for your taking. So yeah, that's why I'm not really a fan of this extension. But why do quarterbacks make so much? Let's start with the elephant in the room. It is the hardest position to play in sports, and it's even a harder position to get right from a front office perspective. The quarterback landscape is incredibly tough because letting a decent quarterback walk, one that you drafted first overall in 2021, one you drafted fifth overall in 2020, in the cases of Tua and Trevor Lawrence, that would reflect very poorly on your GM, on your head coach, on your owners. And during draft interviews, I think all the prospects, yeah, they would still play for you and they would still get the notion that they're excited to play for you. But I think other agents would be like, hey, you got to watch out for this team. They did their past quarterback dirty. And anytime a team can get their hands on a franchise quarterback or one who could be one, they keep him. They keep him and they make him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league just because that's what you do. That's just the market and that's the way things are. And if you don't like it, your option is to keep drafting quarterbacks every 4 or 5 years, regardless of how good your previous one was, and let the roster take over. And honestly, I think that's where the NFL is going to be headed if quarterback contracts still end up being so ridiculous. But one thing you have to remember is, yes, the rules are very offensively friendly, but defensive players just in general are better right now. I feel like we look at relative athletic scores for draft classes, and each defensive player that gets drafted has like a 10, whereas each offensive player, like offenses in general, have just kind of been falling behind over the past 2 years because we've had a lot of really bad offensive performances, like some all-time bad offensive performances. I know that even before a couple years ago, we had some stinkers, but over the past 2 years, like Broncos Thursday night against Colts, I'm trying to think what else. Vikings Raiders this year, where the final score was literally 3-0, and neither team could do anything on the offensive side of the ball. Like, those games have stuck out to me as all-time terrible, and it's kind of the way the NFL is headed, because defense is king. 3 years ago, and the NFL is a cyclical league. Like, there's cycles that go on and on. 3-4 years ago, everybody was like, wow, 2020 had the most points scored ever. Can't wait to see how offenses progress from here on out. But then defenses caught up. So overall, defensive scheming and defensive players are just better right now, because defensive linemen are 6'6", 300 pounds. They all have abs, and it's just scary. It's like freaks of nature on the other side of the ball, and offensive linemen are just massively under-talented. So I don't know, I just kind of went on a little rant about that, and there's some things that plague the quarterback market right now. Mahomes, he should be the center of the market. Like, he has won 3 Super Bowls in the first 5 or 6 years of his career starting. I think 5, yeah. So he wants to take a team-friendly deal so Kansas City can build a better roster. But he has been very vocal about how he wants to move the needle for other quarterbacks, because the NFLPA would be pissed if these quarterbacks took lower average per year deals. Like, say, for example, Mahomes is like, all right, I make enough off of endorsements. I'm only going to have the Chiefs pay me $15 million a year. And then I think the NFLPA would step in and be like, no. If the Chiefs can pay Patrick Mahomes $15 million a year, then the Bills are going to be like, hey, Josh Allen, why aren't you taking $15 million per year? Patrick Mahomes has done it, and he's better than you, and he's won 3 Super Bowls. So if you cared about the team, you do it too. Or, hey, Lamar, you haven't been able to get past the Chiefs. Why do you think you deserve $50 million? Why do you think that we should pay you any cent higher than Mahomes actually gets? And that's just the reason for why quarterback contracts look the way they do, and why a guy just can't take something that's like, they can still take a deal that's team friendly. But what is team friendly in this market? Like $33 million a year, which is what Baker Mayfield is getting, and I think that's a pretty good deal, all things considered, for both sides. But another thing is that restructures, they don't change the value of the contract, they just change how the money is spread out. And you're going to see that that's a big theme of what I'm going to talk about in the middle of this sort of video presentation I have going on here. And people have always been saying the cap isn't real. People look at what the Saints do, and people look at what the Eagles do, and they're just like, wow, cap masterclass, great management here. But let's be honest, it's very, very real. And it's very malleable, because good players, they always move on from, or they don't always move on, but teams can't always keep every single good player. If the cap was a myth, then I'm pretty sure each team that drafts a good player would just be able to hold on to them for dear life, as long as the player wanted to be a part of that team. But one thing about restructuring all these contracts is that the owners kind of have to put it in escrow, and most of it becomes guaranteed. That is a kind of bolt in the, or a nail in the wrench of that as well. So why do quarterbacks make so much? And this is part 2 of what I was getting at. Every NFL employee, every person who is in the NFL right now, player, coach, GM, all that, they are currently building a resume, and jobs and legacies are on the line. You can look at a guy from 5 years ago in your head coaching search and be like, wow, he went 9-8. That might be, he might be a good candidate over the person who we want to hire with no head coaching experience. But if you find a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, what sense does it make to go out and try to draft someone when you don't even have a high pick that probably isn't going to be as good as Trevor Lawrence anyway? So you don't want to be in that middle ground where you're looking for a quarterback, but you don't think your current quarterback can get it done. But so teams would rather eat a giant quarterback cap hit and gamble with other positions. Hey, we can pay you $55 million a year, Tua, and we're going to have a revolving door of wide receivers. Hey, Patrick Mahomes, we are going to give you Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney. Make it work. And he did. But Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills this past year. All right, Josh Allen, we're getting rid of Stephon Diggs. We're going to draft Kollmann, but still, you're going to have to be dealing with Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, and James Cook as your best weapons. And it's not that bad of a unit, but at the same time, this is kind of what goes into roster construction with the NFL. You're gambling with other positions, because the 4 premium positions in the NFL, as according to how they're paid, are quarterback, offensive tackle, edge rusher, and honestly, you could group interior defensive line with that as well, because interior defensive linemen have been getting absurd contracts as of late, and corner. Like, all those positions are usually the 4 core pieces of your roster, and so teams would rather gamble with those positions. And even then, if you find a good player at that position, if you sign your quarterback to a big deal, you're not going to be able to keep the rest of those guys. So, example, Patrick Mahomes, he signed his big deal, and the Chiefs had to decide between Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, and they decided between Chris Jones. So yeah, once again, that's another thing for the cap doesn't exist crowd. You can't sell excitement to fans and ownership with a horrible starting quarterback as well. How do you think you're going to go up to Giants fans and be like, hey guys, Daniel Jones, yeah, he's our quarterback heading into this year. You guys excited about that? And then Giants fans are like, yeah, I don't know. But the GM, he can't go up to the owner and just be like, yeah, Daniel Jones is our future, Yeah, hey, don't fire me. Please don't fire me. Yeah, that's basically the vibe I get when, teams are trying to sell us these awful quarterbacks. And it's rare for teams to jump from franchise quarterback to franchise quarterback. It's very uncommon for it to go from, Rodgers to Love and having Favre even before Rodgers. It's very rare for that to happen to an NFL team. Instead, it's a lot more common for a team to look like the Broncos, where, okay, John Elway retires, and then you go to Brian Griese, and then you go to some Jake Plummer. You got some Jay Cutler sprinkled in there as well. Then you got some Kyle Orton, then some Tim Tebow. Then Peyton Manning happens, and then Brock Osweiler steps in as well. And then Brock Osweiler and Manning both leave in the same offseason. So you go to Simeon, then to Paxton Lynch, then to who came after those guys? Case Keenum, and then to Joe Flacco, and then to Drew Lock, and then to Brandon Allen, and then to Teddy Bridgewater, and then to Russell Wilson, and then to Jarrett Stidham, and then to Bo Nix. Like, that is a lot more common in the NFL. And just me naming all those guys, and I think the Broncos have really set an example for what teams do not want to be at the quarterback position. So people are just like, all right, we see what these teams are going through. We see that, what's another team? We see what the Commanders have gone through at the quarterback position over the past few years. They literally had Carson Wentz and then Sam Howell, and before that, Taylor Heineke, and just a bunch of other guys like the ghost of Alex Smith. Just a bunch of other guys who were unexciting, Case Keenum as well. And then they're just like, okay, we don't want that to happen. So that's the point I'm getting at when I talk about that. Moral of the story, it's hard to find one. You can swing and miss, and you can keep swinging and missing until you get that position right, but it can take years to potentially figure out the NFL. So here is an introduction to NFL contracts, and this is just going to set everything up for the rest of this video, and it's going to make more sense. So salary, it counts against the salary cap the year it's paid. It's not always consistent from year to year, but there is an average annual value that people point to. And then signing bonuses. So they are paid upfront to the player, but spread out for the number of years across the cap. Like, for example, down below, I have a $60 million signing bonus for a player with a 4-year deal, counts $15 million against the cap each year, and that's tacked on in addition to their salary. Now, if a player gets traded or cut, all signing bonus money that's still counting against future years, it comes to that team's cap that year. So, example, the Broncos owe Russell Wilson $41 million this year, and they actually did have an option to eat all $109 million this upcoming year, but they opted against that. So I think it's around $41 million or $49 million. I can't remember the exact number this year, and then $37 million the next year, and then by 2026 it's off the books. So number 5, if a player has any guaranteed salary in future years, it accelerates if he's cut, but travels to a new team if he's traded. So for example, Carolina did have to pay a little penalty as far as dead money when they traded DJ Moore to Chicago, but Chicago was on the hook for DJ Moore's 2023 to 2025 guarantees after that trade was made because he was signed through 2025. So there's some other stuff like void years, and that's something that really confuses me when I look at contracts, and I do wish I had some help with that while I was making this video. There's also rollover and retirement and unguaranteed void years and workout bonuses and roster bonuses and just all that stuff. But post June 1st, there's a lot of terminology that goes into this, but we're not going to focus on any of that today. So here's an example of how teams can create cap space. They can restructure a team's deal, and the teams that have been famous for this over the past few years have been the Saints. People are always talking about how they're kicking the can down the road. But so does every other team. Every other team does this. These teams are just the biggest example of teams that appear in the headlines every offseason because they restructure so many guys. So the money can be converted into a bonus, but that bonus can then be split up over however many years they want to. So the Saints, they can just be like, all right, we're restructuring, what's a player? We're restructuring Cameron Jordan this year. He's going to make $15 million. It gives us $15 million in cap space. And instead of, paying all that this year, we're going to, instead of paying him $15 million up front, we're going to spread that out. We're going to pay him over the next 5 years. It's going to count against our salary cap $3 million per year. And that bonus can then be split up, however they deem fit, as I mentioned. So it's basically like an interest-free loan as long as the owner shells out the money. Like, this isn't like a car where you buy it now and then, in 4 years you still have to pay, you're ending up paying, 7% more or what it would have been. I think that's actually a pretty bad interest rate, but you get where I'm going from. And the guaranteed money from owners, it is put into escrow. It's put into an escrow account that they cannot do anything, they cannot touch, and I'm more interested about the cap implications of that. So it does kind of benefit you to have rich owners. It actually doesn't even benefit you to have rich owners. It just benefits you to not have cheap owners, like dirt cheap owners in the NFL. I'm talking about like the Haslams of the world and the Mike Browns and all that. So here are the disadvantages to a restructured deal. So if you're just like, okay, you can create unlimited cap space with an interest-free loan, what happens to that? Well, it means 100% of a player's money for a year is guaranteed. So the cost of trading or cutting a player is much more expensive, and when their dead cap increases, you commit to a player much more, and they only restructure players who they are sure are long-term fits. So here are some notable quarterbacks that have not been restructured in 2024, and I just want you to spot anything with them. Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford. Now, Kyler and Stafford are still good quarterbacks, but ultimately, your commitment to a quarterback once you restructure them, especially because quarterback is the most, how do I put this? It is the most important position in sports, and you really don't want to be tied with a solution for the long term if a guy's not the answer. Deshaun Watson has not played very well. Ever since he's got his massive deal from Cleveland, he has not been the quarterback they thought he would. So they have not restructured him. So he counts $66 million against the cap this year. He is the highest paid player in the NFL this year. Daniel Jones, he has had a lot of issues ever since he signed his contract as well. He's not even that good of a quarterback. He's actually not a good quarterback at all. But so that's why the Giants haven't restructured him, because if you restructure him, it's better to just eat all the money this year. It's better to just, save it rather than in 2027 still be paying it off. Still have like a $6 million, $7 million cap hit from what you tried to restructure with Daniel Jones. Kyler Murray, again, people were having a lot of questions of him when it was last offseason, and people were just like, oh, I don't know, are the Cardinals going to be able to keep him as well as Caleb Williams and Matthew Stafford? The Cardinals ended up being better than expected, but still, the logic follows. And then Matthew Stafford, a guy who's on borrowed time, and you don't want to be, paying over his retirement. You don't want to be paying him, what you think he's more than you think he should, when A, he's not even on the team, and B, you can avoid it altogether by getting high-level quarterback play this upcoming year. And I just want to say that a player in the last year of a contract cannot be restructured because there's nowhere to push it to. So if the Cowboys were just like, hey, Dak, we're restructuring you, that's just what's happening. He'd just be like, okay, and then you can't push that money into any other years because he's not signed to your roster. So, yeah. But back to quarterback contracts. I'm sorry it got cut off at the bottom there. These quarterbacks are going to be more expensive and only get more money as the years progress because the salary cap will always go up. Just because of the way inflation works, the NFL, it's getting more eyes on the product each year. Therefore, it's a more lucrative business. And it will always go up except for the COVID year. That was the only time I'm sure it didn't go up in a while. And I think it actually didn't go up for the next 2 or 3 years after that. But this past year, it was reported that teams were getting a pretty sizable bump in salary cap pay. I think it was like 30 million, 40 million or something like that. And pretty soon there's going to be no middle ground. Pretty soon, it's going to be either elite quarterback or your best hope is going to be drafting a rookie quarterback with a manageable cap hit. In the middle ground, it's not going to exist. It's just going to be like, you're long gone are the days of paying the guys like the Trevor Lawrences. Long gone are the guys of paying guys like the Tuas who haven't been able to get it done. It's either you're an elite quarterback or we're drafting a rookie, and if you're not willing to stomach that, then get lost. So I'm going to be talking about every quarterback's cap hit now and, their contract in general and just what I think about it. So Dak Prescott, 4 years, $160 million with a $66 million signing bonuses. And this contract expires after this season, and he is a free agent. So if you've been following all the drama with quarterbacks this offseason and the quarterback contracts, you just have to realize that Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are going to be some very, very, very rich men next year. I mean, they already are. They already have, or Dak at least, has more money than any of us could ever hope to see pretty much throughout our lifetime. But he's making $40 million a year, and he's already had 2 contracts throughout his career. And is the deal good for the team? And I think the Cowboys, yes, I think this deal is fine because it was signed 4 years ago, and ultimately it still was a gamble. But Dak had played some very high-level football, and he continues to play some high-level football. But a market deal for this guy, like if you pay this guy $60 million, it might cripple a team because he's never made the conference championship. And he's shown that throughout his career, he is just not going to be that quarterback. It is year 7, 8 now of his career, and he still has not made it past the conference championship. So what are we waiting for? And if you're an NFL team, what are you paying him for? You're paying him to elevate your offense, which, don't get me wrong, he can definitely do. Like, there's going to be some NFC bottom feeder on Thanksgiving that comes into Jerry World and loses 45-10. The Cowboys, they can put up points like nobody's business. But with the Cowboys, you have an absolutely loaded team at pretty much every step of the way. Every unit, there is at least one just absolute stud, at least top 10 player in the NFL it seems like, with the Dallas Cowboys. But a market deal, it might cripple a team. And if the Cowboys do sign Dak to a market deal, then it means maybe not being able to keep one of CD or Parsons. And of the two, you can only keep 2 of those 3. And I'm a huge believer that the Cowboys should let Dak walk. Even if they don't get anything for him, even if they aren't able to trade him, which, I mean, they're not going to be able to trade him. And there hasn't been any news. I don't think that he's holding out or anything like that, but still. All right, Jalen Hurts, 5 years, $255 million and $23 million signing bonus. Now, length remaining on the contract, 4 years after 2024. It ends in 2029, and he is averaging $51 million per year. He's now on his second contract because he was a second-round pick, so he didn't have a fifth-year option. But is the deal good for the team? I mean, yes, it's a market rate deal. There's no strong opinion. He did get this team pretty close to winning a Super Bowl in 2022. So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about him. The Eagles, they're a team that they recycle defensive linemen like nobody's business. And the core pieces of this team, the guys that make the big bucks, are guys like A.J. Brown, are guys like Devontae Smith, are guys like, some of their O-line and defensive linemen that they've signed throughout their time. But, yeah, so the skin and bones of this team, it's pretty much set in stone. And Jalen Hurts is one of those integral pieces to this team. And the way they like to build a roster, they just like to recycle talent over and over again. When it comes time for that edge rusher you had, who had 15 sacks for you, leave last year in free agency, they always have somebody waiting. They always have a high ceiling project just waiting and waiting, because you can never have enough pass rushers in the NFL. But regardless, Hurts deal, it is what it is for this team. Like, I don't have a strong opinion either way. So we'll just call it a good deal. Daniel Jones. So he is making $40 million. And what someone has said to me that I don't really agree with is that the Daniel Jones contract looks better each day that passes. And all I can say is that no, it doesn't, because Daniel Jones is probably the worst starting quarterback in the league. Like, no exaggeration. I challenge you to name a non-rookie who you'd rather have over Daniel Jones. But when he signed this 2 years ago, I was like, okay, you're banking a lot on a guy who's only had one good game throughout his career. He signed for 4 years, $160 million, and he got a $36 million signing bonus. 2 years after 2024 is what's left on this contract, but they're going to cut him after this year, because you can still cut him after this year, and I think they're only on the hook for $22 million of dead cap in 2025, assuming they're able to find their solution by then. But yeah, $26 million. I think they have $11 million in dead cap, so it's a lot more stomachable as well. But still, not a good contract. It's effectively a 2-year, $80 million deal. But yeah, once again, they're just going to move on, and that'll be it. Jaden Daniels, total contract. So this is a rookie deal, 4 years, $37 million, and a $24.2 million signing bonus. So he has 4 years left on his contract, and since he was a first-round pick, he has that 5th-year option. $9.436 million per year. Is this deal good for the team? Yeah, sure. Even though you look at the Commanders roster and you're just like, wow, there's not a lot of good here, at least right now. The Commanders, they still have a way to build around Jaden Daniels. And if Jaden Daniels is able to elevate the team, then they're going to be able to go all in. They're going to be able to use their pieces and use their resources that they have. They have a lot of cap space. They're probably going to finish again with a high draft pick next year. So you can use those picks. You can use that cap space to improve your team. And that's one of the benefits of having a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. Is yes, it is a gamble, as all draft picks are, especially at the most important position in sports. But again, pretty much every rookie on this list, actually all rookies on this list, I have it saying that it's a good deal, because what rookies offer you now is it's a way to find value on your contracts so that it offsets maybe some other veteran contracts on your team that aren't as good, or you can just find a rookie and build a stack team around him. And yeah, so just the fact that that idea exists, that's enough for me to say that every contract is good. So Jared Goff, 4 years, $212 million and $73 million signing bonus. Now, what remains on the contract? It's 4 years after 2024 and it ends in 2029. $53.1 million a year. This is his third contract in the NFL, and is the deal good for the team? I mean, yeah, he was rewarded for turning this team around, and again, their core is starting to come together, and it'll be tough for them to make it back to the NFC Championship just because their division is getting so tough. And now each team probably has the week they play the Lions. If they're in the NFC, they probably have that week circled on their schedule somewhere. So is the deal good for the team? I think so, because he got rewarded for turning the team around. And this isn't a situation where you're paying for his potential. Like, the results are there. He has played at a very high level over the past few years. The Lions have played some very good offensive football over the past few years, and he's just done really, really well. He's made a name for himself, and as I mentioned previously, he was sent to Detroit for literally nothing other than a throw-in, and he ended up becoming very good. So, Jordan Love, just based on what he showed at the second half of last year, I would make the gamble. And the thing about Love is that you don't have anything on the offensive side of the ball that is very, expensive whatsoever. You have Jacobs on like a 1-year, $12 million deal, and you do have some O-linemen, but that's pretty much it. Because everybody, like Watson, Reed, Dobbs, Wicks, all those guys I mentioned, Kraft, Musgrave, they are all on rookie deals. So, and those guys are not in for paydays until like 2 to 3 years down the line. So you're just going to, worry about your offensive skill position weapons later. You're going to invest in defense, as Green Bay always does. And ultimately, Jordan Love, with how he looked in the second half of the year, this was a gamble I would feel comfortable making. Because is the deal good for the team? I mean, I could see it aging pretty poorly. But ultimately, he did have a very, very good second half of football, and this was all a part of Green Bay's plan all along. Like, this is what they were heading towards, this is what they wanted to do, and it's finally coming to fruition. So, the organizational vision is finally here. Jordan Love is your new highest paid player in the NFL. J.J. McCarthy, 4 years, $21.84 million. Oh, by the way, I forgot to put Sam Darnold on here, but I don't really consider his contract. It's the same thing Minshew got, I'm pretty sure. But J.J. McCarthy, 4 years, $21.84 million, $12 million signing bonus. And, is this deal good for the team? Yeah, fine. You can build the rest of your team around J.J. McCarthy. And this isn't a whether I think he's good or not video. This is okay, fundamentally, you have a rookie. Is his deal good? Yeah, sure. And the only reason why I put the thing at the bottom saying, is the deal good for the team, is because there's a lot of veterans that I'm going to be like, no, the deal is not good for the team. But average per year, 5.46 million. So again, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, they have a chance to finally build around J.J. McCarthy. They do have a strong offensive line. Obviously, the big fish is Justin Jefferson, who just got a bag this offseason. Like, he got a quarterback level contract. That's how good, or should I say a quarterback level contract from 5 years ago, because I'm pretty sure him and Dak got the same thing. But yeah, so he has been, obviously the focal point of the Vikings passing offense, and he's going from Kirk Cousins to J.J. McCarthy. So time for him to earn that contract. But regardless, back to J.J. McCarthy in general. It's time for him to show what he can do because, again, 4 years plus fifth-year option. The fifth-year option is huge for the Minnesota Vikings and just what they want to do. If J.J. McCarthy is able to break out, that's going to be clutch. Caleb Williams, the other big fish in the division that got drafted, #1 overall. So I think he was doing something weird with his contract. Like, he didn't sign because he wanted to LLC himself and avoid paying the corporate taxes that you have when you were in Chicago, which I can't imagine that's a cheap state to be paying, or at least cheap city to be paying taxes in. But I don't know. Can someone fill me in on what he tried to do? Like, someone who knows better than I can, or someone who could say it better than I could. But regardless, 4 years, $40 million pretty much, and then a $25.5 million signing bonus. 4 years plus fifth-year option, and he's averaging about $10 million a year. But I do believe that combined, when the signing bonus is all combined, like, it does extrapolate to around $15 million a year, and it obviously really ramps up in year 3, year 4, and if they do sign him to a fifth-year option, or they do tack a fifth-year option onto him, it's going to be an expensive deal regardless. But is the deal good for the team? I mean, yeah, I think so, because Chicago is now in their window, and when you have a guy like Caleb Williams on a rookie contract, it allows you to bring in guys like Keenan Allen, who you are paying like $30 million this year, I'm pretty sure. It allows you to have guys like DJ Moore, and even if those guys aren't, helpful in building your supporting cast for your quarterback long term, it makes it a lot more stomachable for this year when you have guys like Rome Odunze ready to go, and same with guys like Kollmann and Gerald Everett and DeAndre Swift. So they spent a lot of time building around Caleb Williams. They inked Jalen Johnson to his new deal as well. Montez Sweat got the bag after the Bears traded for him. So yeah, that's just basically the possibilities that having a rookie quarterback opens up for you. And there's going to be some guys that do deserve their extension in Chicago, but we'll worry about that later. Caleb Williams is now the focal point of Chicago, and pretty much everything rides on you, Caleb. No pressure, kid. And if the Bears can't figure it out with Caleb, they're just a cursed franchise, and we have to admit it. Baker Mayfield. So the total contract for Baker Mayfield is 3 years, $100 million, and then $28.875 million at signing. He's averaging $33 million per year, and this is a good deal for everybody because I believe outside of Geno Smith, this is the lowest definitive starting quarterback contract in the NFL at this point. So yeah, he really turned it around after coming over from Cleveland, after he got traded to Carolina, and then took an Uber from the LA airport to SoFi Stadium, and just all that, having that story, and then being in a training camp battle with Kyle Trask, he was able to make a name for himself, and he was able to find himself throughout his time in Tampa Bay. So I'm really excited for Baker Mayfield, and I'm just really happy for what he's been able to accomplish throughout his time in Tampa Bay, even though it's been a short time. It's pretty good, and $33 million per year, it's rewarding to him without being like too over the top. And I just really like this deal for everybody because it symbolizes, hey, you're probably not our long-term solution. You're not like our 5-10 year, decade-long solution or anything like that. But it's a team-friendly deal for everybody involved. Derek Carr. So you look at the raw number, you're like 4 years, $150 million. You're just like, wow, this contract sucks. But this is something that I will need some help with from cap experts. I'm just like, okay, 4 years, $150 million, but the contract looks fake. But like when you look at SpoTrack, which is the website that I used for this, like SPO, SPO, track.com, all the years, pretty much all the years are void years. And the upcoming next 2 seasons, he does not account for a big cap hit for the Saints. It's like $20 million a year. So that's a guy that definitely took a pay cut to stay with the team, and he said yes to the restructuring. I don't know if players and teams have to agree to it, but regardless, he did restructure. So I do think that despite the raw numbers looking very bad, you're probably just like, wow, Derek Carr, 4 years, $150 million. Yeah, that's awful. And I would agree. But ultimately, the only things that really matter with a lot of these contracts is the guaranteed money. And Carr, he did agree to restructuring, just like the Saints always do, as we talked about previously. So yeah, that is kind of where he is with everything. Kirk Cousins, 4 years, $180 million, and $50 million signing bonus. You could look at this contract and be like, okay, Kirk Cousins is 36-year-old, coming off an Achilles injury. It's not going to be that good of a contract. It might not age well. And I don't entirely disagree. Like, there is a chance that this contract does not age very well over the next few years, but it's relatively easy to get out of. You can be fine in, a couple of years, and you can not be thinking about the Kirk Cousins contract. You might be thinking about the fact that you drafted Michael Penix not even a month and a half after inking Cousins to this contract, but 3 years after 2024. It ends in 2027, but after 2026, I'm pretty sure that there is no dead cap. So he's only really on your team for 2 or 3 years. But regardless, $45 million per year, and now you're going to hopefully see your best offensive weapons utilized in the way that you thought they could be utilized when you drafted them. They drafted London, Pitts, Bijan, and now they're kind of building outside inward. Like, I'm a huge believer in you build outside inward and then you get your quarterback, because I want my quarterback to be put in a good situation. That way, when my quarterback's window begins, I already have a stacked team and I can already, whatever. And Atlanta is lacking at premium positions just because they did spend so much money, so much draft capital on those weapons, on a tight end and a running back, 4th and 8th overall. But still, this is a team where I could see Cousins taking them pretty far just based on the fact that they do have good offensive skill position weapons. So this is an example of, is the deal good for the team? Because it's not, do I think the quarterback is successful or not? And I actually think Bryce Young is on a pretty solid track to be ruined by the Carolina Panthers, just because Tepper, he's still the owner there. You drafted, Xavier Legette and Jonathan Mingo. So I really, really question the process of the Carolina Panthers and what they do to evaluate their receivers. Your second best receiver right now, as far as veterans are concerned, is Adam Thielen, who's like 37 years old or something like that. Deontay Johnson's your wide receiver 1, which is fine. But Carolina Panthers, I don't really know how to feel about this, because a lot of this is, Bryce Young is being paid the same as Caleb Williams. And obviously, you gave up a haul to draft Bryce Young, and I don't really know the cap implications for something like that. I think they actually netted a bunch of cap space from that in general, but still, we all know if you'd rather have the package or Bryce Young. But 4 years, $38 million a year, $24 million signing bonus. So that's a lot of money. If only I was a little more talented, I could be getting that money too. They have 3 years left, and then a 5th-year option after 2028? No, 2027. Yeah, because then it'll be, 27 or 28. I don't know. But averaging $9.5 million per year. This is his rookie deal. And once again, I just hope that Carolina improves so that we can look at Bryce Young and be like, okay, this is an example of don't judge a guy after his first year. And they've been doing it. They added a few guards this offseason. So yeah, I'm going to take a quick water break. Enjoy my Brock Purdy slide in the meantime. Okay, so as I mentioned at one of the beginning points of this presentation, Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are going to be due for big extensions in 2025. Yeah, next year. Because 4 years, $3.7 million per year. This is the best value contract in probably professional sports, because you get 1 year after 2024 of Brock Purdy, and then he's going to be seeking a massive extension. And $60 million, what can that buy you in San Francisco? Like probably a studio apartment. No, I kid. But enjoy it while it lasts, because the 49ers, they have an absolutely stacked team. And this is what happens. This is why I'm a believer in building from the outside in, because when you have great skill position weapons in Brandon Ayuk, who's probably going to get traded because of Brock Purdy needing a raise, but when you have guys like Ayuk, when you have guys like Debo, Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, Bosa, Warner, just a bunch of guys up and down the lineup that you're just like, dang, this team is really, really solid and really, really good at what they do. It's just, yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it. Other than you should be counting your blessings that you've had Brock Purdy over the past 3 years. And, you know, it remains to be seen if San Francisco is finally going to be able to do something with Brock Purdy. If they're finally going to be able to get him that massive contract. And, or the alternative nobody is talking about is maybe San Francisco drafts someone. Like, if the 49ers are not sold on Brock Purdy as the guy going forward in the future, then maybe they're not going to pay him. And as ludicrous as I think that would be, because Brock Purdy, he kind of is what makes that offense go. Like, he elevates the 49ers just as much as they elevate him. That is an option. So, yeah, we'll see there, but enjoy it while it lasts. So, Matthew Stafford, 4 years, $160 million, $60 million signing bonus. Is the deal good for the LA Rams? Yes, because they got a Super Bowl, and that's all that matters. Stafford literally could have just, I don't know, he could have just done cartwheels every snap last year, and I would have just been like, you know what? In this day and age, you win a Super Bowl and you're not the Kansas City Chiefs, you did a damn good job that year. And that's exactly what the Rams did. They went all in 2021, and it paid off. It paid off in the form of a Super Bowl championship, something that they had been hunting since 2017, 2018, when Sean McVay was their coach. Hold on, chapstick break. And I got something on the bump of my nose. I don't know. Regardless, Matthew Stafford, he got a ring for the Rams. But you also have to realize that Matthew Stafford, he's another guy like Brock Purdy who can elevate guys. Kupp didn't have his, magical 2021 year until Matthew Stafford was a quarterback. A lot of people, a lot of film guys, they say that Puka Nacua is good, but they have their doubts as to if it happens without Matthew Stafford there. And same with Kyren Williams. Like, a lot of people do have the reservations as to, are those guys that good if they are not playing with Matthew Stafford? And you know what? I'm not here to question that, even though I think those two guys are good in their own right. But regardless, Stafford, he's somebody that he's just a baller, man. He's consistently elevated teams wherever he's gone. So I don't think a price is too high for him. Actually, I think a price is too high for him because he's not the quarterback that he once was in his prime, where he's like gunslinging and throwing for like, 40, 50 times a game and 5,000 yards per season. But he's still a very, very good quarterback. And once again, he got a ring. That's all that matters. This contract could be, awful for all we care. You could be paying him $100 million a year, and I wouldn't have any qualms. Geno Smith, this is another one where I look at and I'm just like, okay, for quarterbacks who are on their, I guess in his case, 9th contract, but on a team where you look at everything else, you look at every other starting quarterback contract in the league who's on their 2nd deal, Geno Smith is the lowest. I'm pretty sure. Like, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure, unless you're counting Gardner Minshew and Sam Darnold as starters, which for this exercise I am not. Geno Smith, 3 years, $75 million, and this is a solid bridge deal because you look at it on Spotrac again, and I think it's kind of a manufactured deal where the cap hit is really not that crazy compared to what Geno Smith is actually getting paid. Once again, I need a cap expert to help me out with this one. And yeah, so Geno Smith, let's just call it $25 million per year. That's a pretty dang good value, especially when you compare it to guys like Daniel Jones and just a few others who are absolute scrubs that are getting paid market value contracts. So it's a solid bridge deal for Geno Smith, especially after being on so many different one-year deals. But he ain't right back, though. So I guess that's all you really need to worry about with Geno Smith. But yeah, on his 9th contract, and it ended up being his most lucrative one. So good for Geno Smith for carving out a role with the Seattle Seahawks and being a solid, bridge plus game manager kind of guy who can get you into some shootouts. Kyler Murray. Was this deal good for the Arizona Cardinals? So at the time, it was a market-setting deal. I remember when they signed it. It was 5 years, $230 million with a $20 million signing bonus, and they signed it in the summer of 2022. And people were memeing on it because of the homework clause. Like, they were just like, okay, you have to study film for 4 hours a week, and I think the Cardinals ended up removing that because of the public backlash that came with the contract. And at the time, I thought Keim was signed him to an absolutely embarrassing deal because I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions as to if he actually was the answer in Arizona. I had a lot of questions as to why the offense was collapsing so hard in the second half of the year and had a tendency to under Kyler and Kingsbury. But when he came back, it alleviated a lot of my concerns with him because a lot of people last year, if you remember, I talked about earlier in this video, they were just like, okay, Kyler Murray, yeah, he may not be the answer in Arizona. Like, they could get Caleb Williams first overall. They might finish 0-17. Jonathan Gannon might be in over his head. That's what a lot of people were thinking. But Kyler Murray, he came back from the ACL and he looked very, very good. So it alleviated a lot of my concerns with Kyler Murray. And now he gets Marvin Harrison Jr. to go along with Trey McBride. So there's not a lot of excuses for him if he fails. But is the deal good for the team? Initially, I didn't think so. Initially, I thought that it was like, oh, haha, Steve Keim did that funny thing again. But I genuinely think that this is a solid deal. And a lot of other teams, I think, would be pretty happy if they were able to secure Kyler Murray on a contract like this that the Arizona Cardinals have now, because he is a great quarterback. Obviously, he's a mobile quarterback, and it really, really just helps the run game when he's back there as well. He kind of is Arizona's system because he was Arizona's system with Kingsbury, but even with Petzing taking over, taking the reins from Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, he still kind of is a diet one-man show out there. Josh Allen. Now we're going over to the AFC. So I saved not just the best for last, but the more stacked quarterback conference for second. He signed this in 2020, I believe. It was a 6-year, $258 million deal, $16.5 million signing bonus. So $43.5 million. This was a market deal for a great quarterback at the time. And now it's turning into a valuable contract because he's making only $3 million more than Daniel Jones is after this year. And this deal expires in 2029, and I assume that he's going to get another contract from the Bills at that point. I don't know why he wouldn't, but again, he strikes me as a guy who just wants to win. And when this deal was signed, it turned into a team-friendly deal overnight. So really happy for Josh Allen and how everything has turned out for him going throughout his NFL career, especially with all the discourse that he had to deal with early on where people were just like, no, he's not a quarterback, he's not accurate. You put him, in the red zone to rush, and he can break some tackles and fall into the red zone, but he can't throw. He throws with too much velocity. He doesn't have any touch. He developed all that, and now the Bills have a great contract for a great quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa. So this is one where I talked about earlier. I went on a deep dive into his contract, and not to do it again, but do I like the deal for Miami? No. Because I haven't seen the ability from Tua to win a big game. I haven't seen the ability to deal with weather. And if he does alleviate those concerns, then I will be happy to admit that I was wrong. I will be happy to admit that I got the evaluation on Tua Tagovailoa wrong. Completely wrong. But, yeah, so is the deal good for the team? Right now, I'm going to say no. Because you made him, for 5 hours, the highest paid player in NFL history. So, yeah. Or not the highest paid player in NFL history, but one of the highest per year. So yeah, he can't win a big game. He has shown no ability to do that over the past few years besides, maybe the Cowboys game this year. It was an outlier, but you think about the Titans game where they could have secured the 1 seed. You think about the Ravens game. You think about the Bills game where they had a chance. And if this was your year to win the AFC East, you should have done it. The Patriots were garbage. The Jets, they had a lot of offensive ineptitude. And the Bills still were 5-6 by the time November came around, and you could not take advantage. So that was absolutely ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers, 3 years, $49.54 million, and a $75 million signing bonus. So this is one, do not hate me because I didn't really know how to structure this when I was making this video. Because you look at it, if you just look it up, it's going to be like 3-year, $120 million contract, and you're just like, okay, whatever. But the more I looked into it, and this is just his cap hit over the next few years, like it's extrapolated into a $49.54 million deal, which averages 16 per. But I need some help here because the cap people that know a lot about like void years and stuff like that, I need to know. Because Aaron Rodgers, he did take a pay cut to win with the Jets, but that's basically the extent of my knowledge on this deal. So yeah, that's how I'm thinking about everything with Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. So once again, this is a rookie deal. It's a little bit less than Jane Daniels got. I'm not really going to talk about the deal anymore if it's a rookie because you guys can read, but is the deal good for the team? I mean, with New England, they've just had a lot of offensive ineptitude over the past few years. Bill Belichick kind of left this team in shambles on the offensive side of the ball. The defense was always good, so I'm not really concerned about that. But again, I think they're following the Green Bay formula of, okay, if we just load this guy up with skill position weapons, then how is he going to fail? Because they still have some work to do on the offensive line, and they do still have some question marks as far as their skill position players, and they do need to develop a consistent run game for Drake May to potentially be successful. Or they don't need it, but it would definitely help. It would definitely alleviate a lot of the stress off of him. And yeah, so the Patriots potentially have new life as an NFL franchise, and is the deal good for the team? Yeah, sure. Lamar Jackson, I mean, I said yeah, sure, and that sounds condescending, but yeah, it's a good deal. Lamar Jackson, 5 years, $260 million for $72.5 million signing bonus. Fun fact, negotiated entirely by himself. No agent, so he saved some money. So, remaining on contract 3 years after 2024, so this expires in 2028. He's getting $52 per, and is this a good deal for the team? Yeah, and it's a good deal for Lamar Jackson too. Actually, I don't know if it's a good deal for him because I know that he could be making more, especially because he's better than pretty much every quarterback in the NFL not named Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion. But yeah, incredible player. And the Ravens, they kind of lost their window last year because, or I think it slammed shut just due to the fact that they lost Mike McDonald, and last year was your final year of having Lamar on a non-market deal, and you did have some breakouts from guys like Roquan and Hamilton and Madubuike, but ultimately, are they going to be able to keep their core together? I mean, I'm not too sure, but market deal for a great quarterback, it's a good deal for the team. Deshaun Watson, this is arguably why I have that little bottom thing there. Is the deal good for the team? Because 5 years, $230 million contract along with $44.965 million fully guaranteed. Wait, did you guys hear me? Fully guaranteed. Okay, sorry for breaking your ears if you listen to me, but even with everything settled down with Deshaun Watson and his legal situation, how could you sign a guy that, I mean, I get why Cleveland did it. From a football side, I understand, hey, Deshaun Watson was a top 5 quarterback the last time he played, like unanimous. At very worst, he was a top 5 quarterback in the league. But then he missed out on the whole 2021 season just because of all that drama and just because he wanted to get out of Houston so badly. And oh boy, karma is very real. Texans fans, positive karma is very real. But 5 years, $230 million, $45 million deal, fully guaranteed. And I just don't know what Cleveland was thinking here. There's no justification for what Haslam made his poor front office do, because now that's attached to Andrew Berry for the rest of his life. Now that's going to be on his resume, and teams, you know, if someone wants to hire him down the road, they're going to be like, okay, you gave out the worst contract in NFL history, and then Andrew Berry is going to be like, well, that was from the owner, and then whoever he's interviewing with is going to be like, yeah, right. So yeah, I'm just not really a fan of this contract whatsoever. He is the highest paid player in the NFL this year, and you can actually look that up. $66 million cap hit. I know I talked about it earlier, but highest paid player in the NFL this year because the team does not want to restructure him and make them and give him more money later on, because there's a good chance that he's not going to be worth what he is. He's definitely not worth his contract now. Like, just based on the way he's played throughout his time in the NFL or with Cleveland, like definitely not worth his contract. But yeah, so Justin Fields, total contract 4 years, $18.871 million and $11 million signing bonus. That is the draft capital allocation or draft slot allocation for the guy who was drafted 11th overall in 2021. And this is the last year of his deal because his fifth year option was declined by Was it declined by the Bears or declined by the Steelers? I don't entirely know. But averaging $4.71 million a year. He's had one contract throughout his career. Is the deal good for the team? Yes, even if he is an expensive like reclamation project sort of guy, you can just figure out the re-signing later. You can just figure out everything else to do with it at a certain point. You can figure it all out at a later date. So yeah, team-friendly deal, even if it doesn't look like one right now. Now, what is a team-friendly deal? I felt the need to put Russell Wilson in here just because he is with the Steelers on a one-year, $1.21 million deal. And the reason that that can happen is because the Broncos, or what the Steelers would have had to do, let's say they signed him for $10 million, that would have alleviated the dead cap thing for the Broncos. And I could see Russell Wilson being like, no, I'm going to be as petty as possible. And, you know, he's not in the wrong for doing so. But is the deal good for the team? Yes, because this is arguably, or no, I said that Geno Smith had the lowest quarterback contract in the league. No. It's Russell Wilson. It's definitely Russell Wilson. I don't even know what I was thinking. How could I think that something even compared to 1 year, $1.21 million? But regardless, the investment in Russell Wilson is very, very low for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he's had 5 contracts throughout his career, and he can be a steady veteran presence. And getting that for $1.2 million is a total steal. Now, no pun intended, Joe Burrow, 5 years, $275 million contract, along with a $40 million signing bonus. Now, he is being paid $55 million a year, 5 years on his contract after 2024, expires in 2030, and you'll notice that these numbers are very similar to what Trevor Lawrence got. So the Bengals were ahead of the curve on this one. Props to them, because usually it doesn't happen that way, just knowing Cincinnati and how they operate. But is he good for the team? Yes. Now, unfortunately, due to some of the cap casualties and due to some of the situations going on in Cincinnati, I don't think they're going to be able to keep T. Higgins. Like, they franchise tagged him, and he is going to be playing on the tag, and that probably was his best option, because Ayuk is somebody that is going to be headed out there as well, and I couldn't see teams really giving up to that much if they know that Higgins and Ayuk are both available, because the scarcity of resources is kind of down, and I don't see a place that would realistically trade for him right now outside of the Commanders or the Steelers, like either of them. And the Steelers play in the Bengals division, so that's automatically off the table. But yeah, so once again, Joe Burrow, market deal for a great quarterback. They are going to have to pay Jamar Chase. They are going to need some of their young talent to step up just to make sure that this, contract is not that bad in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, it's a market deal for a great quarterback. CJ Stroud, 4 years, $36.27 million, as well as a $23.38 million signing bonus. One thing about the Texans is that their window is now. When you have CJ Stroud on a rookie deal, and this is kind of another point of the video and another message I was trying to send, you have the ability to go out and get Stephon Diggs. You have the ability to, make a few moves in free agency that maybe you wouldn't have had the chance to make if you were paying a veteran this exuberant amount of money. Regardless, CJ Stroud, he proved last year that he is legit staying power in the NFL. Like, he is a top 7 quarterback, in my opinion, like almost indisputably, even just based on what he's shown after last year. Like, I think CJ Stroud, how did the AFC get another superhuman quarterback? That's all I have to say. But with DeMeco Ryans, with Bobby Slowick, this team definitely is headed in the right direction. And CJ Stroud, if he takes that sophomore leap, a lot of people are going to be thinking, wow, he's one of the biggest bargains in the league. And he already is one of the biggest bargains in the league, just based on what he's giving you and the high-level play that you were able to get from him his rookie year. So a lot of people are really excited about him. And if you're a Texans fan, you should be. Because, man, oh man, is he good. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence. 5 years, $37 million, or no, $275 million. Sorry, it's been a long video so far. Plus a $36 million signing bonus. So it's a 6-year deal. It ends in 2030, and the average per year is $55 million. And is this a good deal for the team? No, because ultimately you still are paying for his potential. You still are paying for what you think he could become, and that's a part of the reasons why. That's one of the big reasons why the CBA was completely redoing rookie contracts in 2011, because they were tired of guys like Sam Bradford coming in, getting drafted first overall and resetting the market. Like, I'm pretty sure Jake Long in 2008 signed his deal even before the Dolphins had turned in their card on draft night. And I don't know, that was pretty funny. But ultimately, you are paying for his potential just based on the way his career's gone. 9-8 this previous year, 9-8 the year before, and then the first year was a disastrous Urban Meyer year. But we do not have a big sample of Trevor Lawrence being good in the NFL. We have a sample, don't get me wrong, of Trevor Lawrence being good, but everything that's gone on around him, like people were saying, well, the O-line's bad. He didn't get a lot of help from Calvin Ridley. He didn't get a lot of help from his receivers outside of Ingram. Like, okay, so how are you going to fix that? Because now you just paid Trevor Lawrence. And yeah, the discourse is rampant throughout the NFL, but still, I don't think that Trevor Lawrence was worthy of the contract that the Jaguars gave him. If they did not, in the Jaguars' defense, they have not found an answer to this problem for a great many years. And this is their chance. They finally have one. And another thing is that if they had not done this, one team would have been like, oh my God, we had him graded as the first overall player in 2021. Trade the farm for him. Trade 3 first. So I understand why Jacksonville did this. I would not have. Anthony Richardson. So again, he's still on his rookie contract, 4 years, $33 million. And is this a good deal for the team? Yes, because they can build around Anthony Richardson. The Colts went 9-8 last year, or it was either 9-8 or 8-9, while they were starting Gardner Minshew for a winner-take-all wildcard game. That should tell you everything that you need to know. Or actually, it was a winner-take-all game for the division. Wow. So yeah, they were playing for the division, and they took C.J. Stroud down to the wire. And if they had healthy Anthony Richardson, like, I don't think it's a question as to if this team wins the division last year. Regardless, the Colts, this is one of my biggest complaints about the Colts. They always have millions of dollars in cap space that they never do anything with. The last time I remember them going out and getting somebody outside the organization to come in and be a force for the team was DeForest Buckner, and that was in 2020. One of my biggest frustrations with this team is that their cap space, it always goes to extensions. And I understand, getting your guys to those second contracts and developing them and all that. But occasionally, you got to take a big swing in free agency, man. Like, can you imagine if the Colts had gone out and got Snead? I think they tried to. Regardless, yeah, I just wish the Colts would be more proactive in getting resources outside the building. But is the deal good for the team? Yes, because they can build around Anthony Richardson. And even if Anthony Richardson reaches his ceiling over the next 2 years, you're not paying him like he is an MVP. You're going to be paying him on a rookie contract. So he's going to be averaging like $12 million a year. And even if he is as good as the Colts think he can become, you're still getting some value there as well. Will Levis. So this is not a do I think these quarterbacks are good video. This is a do I like his contract video. And the answer is yes. It's easy to manage if he's not the answer, because he's only making $10 million a year roughly in salary throughout his whole time there, and it's around $14 million per year just in general when you consider everything else. So the length remaining on the contract is 2 years after 2024, and the average per year as far as salary, $2.385 million. And again, with the Tennessee Titans, they were able to build around Will Levis, so that's why I like this contract. And that's a big example setter for the rest of these videos. They were able to go out and get Snead. They were able to go out and get Ridley at the very last second. They were able to go out and get Cushenberry. They were able to go out and get guys like Tony Pollard. So that's a big thing about why I think teams need to look more outward and then inward instead of Will Levis and then, actually, maybe that's not a good example because Levis was on this team last year and they were bare bones, but they are building around Will Levis, and the overall point is that you need to build around your rookie quarterback. As soon as you find a guy who you think you can be the answer, like, you build around them, because if he's not the answer, you can still bring somebody in who you think can be the answer after plan A fails. But yeah, Will Levis, once again, easy contract to manage if he's not the answer. So, yeah. Patrick Mahomes. Now, this should be the market deal for quarterbacks because it's 10 years, $450 million, and $10 million in signing bonus. But one thing about this deal I don't think people realize is because you're obviously never going to trade or cut Mahomes, But so that allows you a lot of room as far as flexibility and restructures. It allows you a lot of flexibility as far as bonuses and averaging $45 million per year. Now that's just a part of the 10-year $45 million number. His cap hit this year is like $38 million, I want to say, but next year it's locked in at $65 million or something like that. And he's worth every penny. Like, obviously, like, I'm not gonna say that he's not. But one of the other sides of the coin is, okay, you're going to be paying Mahomes for all these years, and if you keep restructuring and restructuring, you're going to have some very, very expensive years down the road when he's no longer an effective quarterback. Now, when is that? I don't know. Could be 15 years from now, could be 30. Yeah, I don't know. But he should be the market deal for teams to look at and just be like, okay, you look at what Patrick Mahomes is making, and he has been, once again, very vocal about wanting to make sure that all the other quarterbacks can get what they fully deserve as far as their contracts. So yeah, and I think he's one of the reasons why the QB contract landscape looks like it does today. Aiden O'Connell, 4 years, $4.34 million, as well as a $509K signing bonus. This is again a 4th round contract where you can throw him out there and you're getting a cheap discount. This is very similar to the Brock Purdy situation, even though Aiden O'Connell has not shown that ability yet for the Raiders. Yeah, still he's making around $4.85 million per year just based on his other stuff, just based on his total contract value, so including total contract value as well as signing bonus. But after 2024, he's going to have 2 years on his deal, so maybe he proves to be the answer for the Raiders, and maybe he's up for an extension next year. But somebody who's more exciting to talk about for the Raiders just because of contract stuff is Gardner Minshew. Now, ultimately, I do think Minshew is the backup, and I do think they're going to give AOC an opportunity to, be the next homegrown Raiders quarterback. But yeah, 2 years, $25 million a year, as well as a $6 million signing bonus. His length remaining on the contract is 1 year after 2024, and he's averaging $12.5 million per year. So he's had 3 contracts throughout his NFL career so far, and this is nothing more than just a bridge deal. This is nothing more than just all right, let's, if AOC is bad or AOC, he is not able to start 1 week, or even Minshew, if they decide to go with him week 1, like, I don't know. So this is kind of that treading water phase where you kind of have a lot of flexibility with your quarterback. You're not overpaying him, but you're also not like, I don't know, you're not shafting him either. But yeah, ultimately, I would say that this is a good deal for the Raiders, for a team that's kind of trying to play money ball with their QB room heading into this year because they didn't really have the option for one in the draft. Yeah, that's kind of how everything is going right now. Now, with the Broncos and Bo Nix, is this a good deal for the team? So it's 4 years, $18.61 million plus a $10.3 million signing bonus, $4.653 million per year, and with his signing bonus, I believe he bought a $4 million house. So good for him. But 4 years plus a 5th-year option, and they are going to need Bo Nix to step up, and they're going to need a lot of young talent on the team to step up because they're paying Russell Wilson $49 million this year, and he's not even on the team. He's not even in the same division. That doesn't make sense, but he's in the same conference. But regardless, you know what I meant. They are going to need Bo Nix to step up in a huge way just due to how the dead cap on this team is spread out. Randy Gregory, you're still paying him a lot of money from, that absolute disastrous signing. Russell Wilson, obviously, the big fish there. And there are some other guys who I look at and I'm just like, okay, I could realistically see this team cutting. Like Garrett Bowles, he's one of the leaders of the team. But I could still see the Broncos moving on next year if they don't think they can get a long-term deal worked out. And ultimately, this team, they need good things to happen. They need Bo Nix to break out for them to have a semblance of success, to have a semblance of even sniffing success coming into these next few years in the NFL, because there's not a lot of young talent here. The young talent pool is very thin. And ultimately, is this a good deal for the team? Yes, because they're relatively cap strapped. So it's not like okay, we have this quarterback and we can try to build around him with young talent. It's okay, we need our young talent that's currently in the building to really step up. They don't really have the resources to go out and get and trade their first round pick if they want to, just because of how bad they've been over the past few years, and they sunk a lot of resources into the Russ trade as well. Justin Herbert, I think this is the last contract I'm here to talk about, but yeah, 5 years, $262 million, as well as a $60 million signing bonus. 4 years after 2024, $52.5 million per year. I don't know if he signed this before or after Josh Allen. I think it was a little bit after, but regardless, this is the second contract that he has had. So, yeah, good for him. He finally got that veteran deal. And is this a good contract? I would say yes. Even though you don't have him on a rookie deal anymore, he's a guy who the production, it has tailed off the past 2 seasons. Like, it's been pretty sad to watch him get completely ruined and obliterated by the fact that Brandon Staley was his head coach. But now you have Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh, he's probably going to surround him with a run game. He's probably going to try to surround him with a defense, because the Chargers have surrendered the most points in the NFL since Justin Herbert took over as their starting quarterback. And part of that is, yeah, you're pretty much always going to be in a shootout when you're playing against Justin Herbert, besides last year when their offense really tailed off at the end of the year. But either way, remaining on the contract 4 years. So he is still tied to LA, and I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. And ultimately, this is a deal where, it just kind of is what it is. Market deal for a great quarterback. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He got paid like one. That's all there is. So that does it for me. Thank you for sticking around this long, if you did stick around this long, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.